Bring it on.
I thought it was only fitting that my first review posted on the channel after I built my new powerful PC would be a PC game. This is so much more than that though. Before we jump into the review, I want to mention that I will only be showing the very first hour or so of gameplay to prevent any potential spoilers. Ion Fury fits perfectly alongside Doom, Quake, Duke Nukem 3D, and its 90s first-person shooter brethren. Much like Dusk and a Medieval released before it, Ion Fury celebrates first-person shooters of the 90s in a way that really hasn't been done before, at least not to this degree. While Dusk used the Unity engine and a Medieval used the Unreal engine, Ion Fury actually uses the Build engine. And I can't tell you how amazing that is, because it gives the game a whole other layer of authenticity that I haven't quite experienced before. Now, for those that don't know, the Build engine was originally developed in 1995 and would go on to power Duke Nukem 3D, Shadow Warrior, and Blood. While it has been heavily modified and tweaked, it still has all the limitations that a game being developed in the mid to late 90s would have. And because of that, it's incredible. Modern day first-person shooters have one thing in common. They're massive cinematic experiences with grandiose set pieces whose objective is to push the narrative forward and make you feel awesome while doing so. The thing is, the focus on exploration is all but lost today. I mean, we have directional aids that literally tell you precisely where you need to go. Now, without sounding like a 90-year-old man, there's something to be said about the simpler times where all you had was a map, but it was entirely up to you to figure out where you needed to go next. Ion Fury is precisely like that. The game is broken up into a bunch of zones, each with their own stages that are chock full of secrets and require you to learn their ins and outs if you hope to make it to the next area. One element that I just adore is how the game was built, in that it feels much more open-ended than any of the shooters from the 90s. As you can see in the video, you're treated to a sprawling city, and while there are only so many places you can go, the game leaves exploration up to you. Stages are not simply made up of a series of corridors leading to an eventual exit. No, instead, they're only small sections of a much larger world. The stages I mentioned before don't actually have exits or endings like a lot of the classic first-person shooters did. Instead, you'll see a warning telling you that you have located X of Y secrets in the area. If you proceed beyond that point, then the game will pause for about a second or two and then load in the new area, which effectively means you've entered the new stage. But that doesn't prevent you from turning right around and going back to the previous area. Now, that's not always the case, mind you, but this is how it works for the most part. After about 5 or 6 of these warnings, or stages, you'll come to a boss fight and then the zone actually ends and you'll see how you did overall. While progression is ripped right out of the 90s, meaning you need to find colored key cards in order to progress, I just love the change of pace. Health packs are scattered everywhere and ammo can be found in logical and illogical places. This is how it used to be, and this love letter truly feels as though it was developed back in '96. Voidpoint has created an absolute masterpiece, and I just had to share my thoughts on this brilliant game. The game begins with players taking on the role of Shelly Bombshell Harrison, a bomb disposal expert working for the Global Defense Force, or GDF. Dr. Jadis Heskel has created an army of cyborgs and is hell-bent on taking over the futuristic city of Neo DC. Only you have the power to stop him. Does this story sound a little light? Well, it should, because that's pretty much all you're going to get until the ending, and it feels great not to have hundreds of cinematics and over-the-top action sequences. The game is over-the-top enough, and it doesn't need any of this other fluff. Shelly is very reminiscent of Duke, in the sense of her one-liners and sense of humor, and that should come as no surprise as the publisher of Ion Fury is none other than Duke Nukem 3D's parents, 3D Realms. The absolute best aspect of Ion Fury is the attention to detail. Everything looks incredible. I have never seen this much detail put into a retro-inspired video game before. Every corner is just dying to be explored, and the more you do that, the more you see and the more secrets you find. The map layouts are much more realistic than something you would have seen in the 90s, and that's actually a welcome change. This means you'll never be left scratching your head trying to find a yellow door now that you have the yellow keycard. You'll know more or less where you have to go. The level design is such that you'll know precisely what you need to do so long as you spend a good amount of time learning the environments, and that is something I have truly missed from modern shooters. I haven't really had to stop and take in the sights for years now, and it feels so good doing so here. It can actually be breathtaking at times. The audio is equally impressive, the soundtrack is delightful, and the sound effects have that old crunch sound to them. The game uses tracker music, the first to do so with the build engine, and doesn't use Redbook audio or straight MIDI files. The results speak for themselves. The soundtrack is purchase-worthy, and each stage has its own distinct sound and to a larger degree its own distinct feel. The build engine wasn't originally designed to consider multiple body shots, but somehow Voidpoint has adapted the engine to allow for headshots, foot shots, and more. This is actually incredible if you know anything about the technology being used here. They have pushed this engine further than anyone else has before, and it shows. I was also pleasantly surprised by the difficulty. It offers a nice challenge for its entire 10-hour campaign. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the excellent weapons and enemies before closing out. Enemies are some of the best inspired from the 90s. At first you'll be tackling simple foes with a revolver, but before too long you'll have spider bots, mechs, and so much more coming at you. It's a good thing that the weapons are kick-ass. Most weapons have a secondary ability, and I enjoyed every single one of them. The revolver, called the Lover Boy, is one of my favorite starting weapons in any first-person shooter. Typically you use the handgun at the earliest portions of the game, and then you upgrade to something else and you never look back. But here you're going to use the Lover Boy for the duration of the game thanks to its secondary feature. It allows you to target a few enemies at once and then unleash hell. This is particularly useful for spider bots and flying enemies. About the only complaint I have with the weapon system, or gameplay at all, is I found the shotgun to be a little bit too powerful at longer ranges, but outside that, it's all gold. Every game has, a few nitpicks that annoy you. For me, it's little issues I have with some of the pacing with this game, because the action gets more and more intense that by the time you hit the 6 or 7 hour mark, I just found that everything started to blend together a little bit. But at no point did I not have fun, and that's the key element here. I always had fun. I can wholeheartedly recommend Ion Fury. It's one of the very best games of 2019, and for all you console owners out there, it will be coming to console at some point later this year, and it will be very interesting to see how the build engine adapts to modern day consoles. Right now, if you have a PC, give this 90 megabyte game a download and enjoy what is a true contender for Game of the Year. It's absolutely incredible.